The sentencing for former North Charleston police officer Michael Slager will take place here in downtown Charleston on December 4th. In this special edition of Quintin's Close-Ups, I speak exclusively with Mark Peper one-on-one. And be sure to download the free Quintin's Close-Ups app in your Apple or Google Play stores.
Well, it's so good to see you again.
Great to see you, Quintin.
I appreciate this. Yes, sir. Well, let's hear Judgment Day coming Monday, December 4th. And a lot of people right now are saying, well, this might happen in just one day. But this is going to take a couple of days.
I'd be surprised if the federal government and Andy Savage can get in and out in one day. That would surprise me.
Wow.
I think they're going to be there at least a day and a half, maybe even two.
Why? Why?
They got a lot to talk about. Just by way of review, as you know, he pled guilty to civil rights violation. Well, you've got to have an underlying crime to then violate the civil rights, okay? So what is being left up to Judge Norton is to decide whether or not the underlying crime was second-degree murder, which the federal government would have Judge Norton believe, or simply a heat of passion manslaughter, okay, which Andy and Officer Slager would have you believe.
Right.
That in and of itself could very well be a mini trial all over again that I anticipate taking at least a day, if not 2 full days, to figure out.
As a matter of fact, the sentencing, as you mentioned, will take a couple of days, but both sides are likely to call expert witnesses and family members of both Scott and Slayer, according to a local television station. So who should they call up?
Well, if you're the defense, you want to call up as many family members. You want to personalize Mr. Slager. You want to talk about his childhood. You want to talk about his adolescence. You want to talk about his college days, especially if it's beneficial.
Right.
You want to talk about his track record of any awards or accolades he's won. The defense always wants the judge to understand, before you hand down an active prison sentence, I want you to know my client. You want to put a person to that name, okay? Now on the flip side, the federal government is going to want to point out all the flaws in whether it's his history, his track record, the way he's maybe treated citizens of the community, and then really focus in on the actual actions of that morning in April, to really hit home how grave the situation was. Because at the end of the day, Officer Slager is asking for a sentence that's down this way, and the federal government is trying to sway Judge Norton to go up a little bit.
As a matter of fact, as you mentioned, Slager's attorney will argue the sentence should be 10 to 12 years for manslaughter, and even ask for a variance for a short term in prison. So what's that variance?
So in the federal court system, there's what's called a sentencing guideline. It's a range, and it's a big table graph chart that would take months to figure out. Trust me, okay? Interestingly, his guidelines, what the federal government probation has said, is what we call 31 with a level 1, which puts him in a category of somewhere between 9 and 11, a little over 11 years, okay? The variance comes into play in that Officer Slager is going to try to convince Judge Norton to vary downward from that 9 to 11 year range, and the federal government's going to ask him to vary upward, okay? V-A-R-Y, vary upward, okay? So that's going to be the variance that's really being litigated. Now that's assuming that Officer Slager can convince Judge Norton that the appropriate guidelines are within that 9 to 11.25 years. The government, through the probation and the pre-sentence report, and this is exclusive to you, Quintin, they believe it was manslaughter. They are recommending to the judge that he be sentenced into that manslaughter category of 9 to 11.25 years. The federal government ain't happy about that. They firmly believe it was murder. And so they're going to be asking for that, not only the upward, but to get rid of this 9 to 11 guideline and be up here in that 18 to 22 range. There's going to be some fireworks.
Not only did Savage beat the state government, he's also beating the federal government, it sounds like.
Well, if you look at the facts that have been pled to, reasonable people can always disagree. Was this heat of the moment, passion? Was this murder? Okay. if the goal all along was to prevent him from being found guilty of or sentenced to murder, then it does look like Officer Slager is going to have beaten that.
Wow. I want to change paces a little bit because obviously your client,
Sure.
Pierre Felton, was involved with this situation. How's he doing emotionally?
You know, I have not talked to him since the federal plea went down. I briefly said, you know, do you want to appear? And he said all along, you know, he came and he gave his testimony in the state case.
Right.
And he said, Pep, I'm good. I don't need you anymore. I'm going to go do my own thing. He's actually doing very well considering everything. Now, what I always tell my clients, both present and former, is no news is good news. If I don't hear from you, I assume you're doing good. And I haven't heard from Pierre in a while, so I feel like he's doing well.
Wow.
Yeah.
So let's fast forward to the end of this mini trial. If you were Andy Savage, what would be playing in your mind?
Right. Well, again, I would adamantly be asking Judge Norton to adopt the pre-sentence report, which calls for that 9 to 11 year range for manslaughter. So that's the first and foremost goal if you're Andy Savage, is convince Judge Norton to go along with the sentencing recommendations of the Department of Probation. Okay? And then, going back to what we discussed earlier, I would try to personalize Officer Slager as best you could. Call family members, call expert witnesses to talk about heat of passion and what runs through your mind, to really personalize Michael Slager so that when the judge has the ability to maybe go downward from that 9 to 11 year range, he says, you know, this is a person, right? Now on the flip side, the government's going to be quick to point out that this is not the only person that's been affected by this, Judge. We have a dead man that was gunned down. And they'll start harping on what shows on the videotape. A guy running away, fleeing, being shot in the back. So it's going to get heated in there. Judge Norton has a very, very tough job, but I will tell you this, he is fair. He is a lawyer's lawyer.
Right.
He is one of the best judges we've had in a long, long time. I don't know what the right or wrong decision is, but I'm confident in this. He'll make the right one.
I asked you the wrong question. The person everyone was going to really focus on afterwards and doing this mini trial is Scarlett Wilson.
Well, you know, interesting enough, not a lot of people understand the semantics of this federal plea.
Okay.
But one of the things that was accomplished, right or wrong, is the state charge was dismissed. As part of the federal plea, the state charge was dismissed. Now, Scarlett has come out and said, we believe that's a fair resolution because he's pled guilty in federal court. Okay, a lot of other people have come and said, that ain't right. He never had a chance to answer in federal court, and you shouldn't have given him a pass. You know, you should have tried him again in state court. A lot of people on the street are saying, she kind of quit. I don't pass opinion on that, but I just keep my ears open, and that seems to be kind of the consensus.
Wow.
It's a tough job because at the end of the day, she represents the state of South Carolina.
Right.
And one thing I know about Scarlett is that she always gives the victims' families input. And it was very clear to me that the victim's family was on board with this universal global plea agreement that she reached with the Department of Justice along with Mr. Savage. So,
wow. Interesting. Very interesting. Well, Mark Pepper, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate this.
Quite welcome, Quintin. Always a pleasure, buddy.
Likewise.
Thank you.
Thank you.